Welcome to this edition of the VMI Center for Leadership and Ethics Leadership Podcast, or CLEAV Podcast for short. I'm Catherine Roy, Communications and Marketing Specialist for the CLEAV. The CLEAV's podcast features interviews with some of the VIP speakers who come to the post of Virginia Military Institute located in Lexington, Virginia. Today's guest is VMI alumnus from the class of 2005, Sean Matson. Sean came to post as a keynote speaker during the 2019 Business Leadership and Innovation Summit. Sean is an alumnus, veteran, and entrepreneur, known for the powered energy drink Strike Force. Sean hits the sweet spot of qualifications we look for as a podcast guest for our series. Your host for today's conversation is CLEAV Conference Project Manager, Derek Pinkham.
The first question I want to ask is, do you have any advice for cadets about their leadership development? What do you wish you knew as a college student or a cadet that you now want to know that would have helped you?
So I think, VMI from day one is building leaders, right? Citizen shoulders. I mean, that's the mission.
It's right out there on our
it's
wall,
a mission.
Yeah.
It's all over VMI, and obviously I'm biased because I am a VMI alum, and I'd say that it's the best college in the world that does this, right? From day one, you're immersed in this culture where you have someone who might be older than you and might be younger than you in your face, telling you what to do. And that's obviously a type of leadership,
Sure.
Authoritative type, and then as you go through your years at VMI, you get different leadership experiences. Now, they might not be big, some are bigger than others,
Right.
or whatever, but you have these opportunities to lead peers.
Yeah.
And arguably probably the hardest leadership challenge you'll ever get to do is your peers. And you're leading these in situations where you might not know
Right.
what to do, but they're telling you, you're the leader, go do it. And so those are some of the most challenging times. So from day one, VMI is building that right away on you. So in terms of what I wish I would have had leaving VMI, going into, I don't know. I don't really because it did a really great job of setting that foundation for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where I will tell you maybe I differed from others is I knew I wanted to go in the military.
Right.
So I took those opportunities. I went to go do cadre. I
Right.
swam.
Right.
I tried to put myself into situations and force myself to learn, to fail. Okay, I've got to learn better, ways to maybe communicate something to somebody, or, articulate my position so that that person now wants to do what I need them to do.
But so if I'm reading you right, so VMI put you in that right position to safely be able to do that.
It gives everybody that walks through the arch that ability. Now it's on the individual to take that and want to pursue through it. So again, the first day you could be set in this. Some people don't want leadership, right?
Sure.
Or they don't want that position. Fine, that's we need those people just as much as we need leaders, because if you have too many leaders,
Right, sure.
too many cooks in the kitchen are just as bad as not having a leader at all.
So there is a followership model. You learn how to follow first, for sure, and that journey will take you through VMI to some command position.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So another one that's personally my favorite question to ask is what are some practices as an effective leader that helped you on your journey? Any specific things that you do that get you in the right mindset, the right mode?
Simple. I treat people the way that I want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
I look at things. I try really hard not to come into. Typically, when you're faced with leadership, I'll say problems, or whenever you're faced with trying to lead someone, usually you're trying to solve a problem with it. It usually kind of goes in synonymous with each other. So your problem solving and a a part that could be a failure in leadership is immediately looking at the problem and saying, all right, you're to blame. Or, no, forget that, right? Right now is not the time to the blame game. It's how do we solve this problem? Let's look at it. Let's dissect everything. Let's figure out how to solve this problem, move forward. Now then take that and, the next step after you've solved that problem is come back and say, how do we mitigate this from happening again, right? So that's when you look at, you're not trying to blame somebody, but like, how can we put steps in place, or how can we put a resource to something that eliminates or mitigates this from happening again from us, so that we can continue to grow and build.
Right. So Professor Morris earlier today said the most important thing about entrepreneurship is process.
Right.
And it sounded like a little bit that's what you were talking about there.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. And and as I said, I mean, typically as leaders, you're trying to solve a problem. Someone gives you something, says you're in charge X, and that could be getting everybody over a wall, or that could be how do we grow this company to X million dollars, or whatever that is.
Right.
But typically, it's those are synonymous with each other.
So you've led in the military, and you're leading now in business and civilian life. So how is that different?
It's different because maybe language
Mm-hmm.
is probably the best way to put it. The other piece of it was, I was, as a SEAL officer,
Mm-hmm.
I led 100% males,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Sure.
So I only had that to deal with. Now, as I got a little bit, more seniority and got more rank, there were opportunities, and I had positions where I had to do a mix of male and female. But for the most part, like my platoon, it's all males.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have enablers to help and other things to that piece of it,
Sure.
but and I had to obviously lead them as well. But for the most part, I have a completely different language with my platoon than I did with enablers.
Right.
And it wasn't that I ever thought less of my enablers. In fact, I see them as equals, because we would never get out on a mission if the intel guy or the admin person or logistician or whoever it is doesn't help with their part to this.
Sure,
It
right.
doesn't work.
Right.
We don't go anywhere without a huge support staff
Sure,
and,
right, of
and
course.
team to help us. So there are different languages that I had to do, that I have in the military and in the civilian world.
Makes sense.
Now, I will say the principles that I use, like, and communicate to my guys, I was very much a hands-off leader. I'm a very, very much hands-off leader. I am not the one to tell you, okay, hey, from 8 to 5, I want to see and break down your hour by hour. I trust enough that the person is going to use their time wisely.
Where was there a professor early on? Was there somebody in the SEALs that taught you something that you always go to?
This might, I don't know the best word for this, but I've always been in competition with myself. I always have been. I was a swimmer growing up. I don't do anything to try to impress anybody. I don't try to do anything to, show off. I'm trying to better myself. And so I'm always in competition with myself, and I am my hardest critic. Obviously, I'm my worst enemy because like this never stops. This feeling I've from 12 years old I wanted to be a SEAL, right? Mm-hmm. VMI was never in that picture until 9th grade ish time frame. When I met an alumni and he was like, hey, you should go to VMI. I was like, I don't even know what that school is. I want to be a SEAL. Like, where does that fit into this? And he was like, well, it's a military school. Okay, well, how? Right. And that helped, that set up. And then, as soon as someone was, hey, you can't do that. or there you go. That's for me, that's all it takes, right? Because I'm going to show you I can do it, because again, that's my driving force, is me, and how do I better myself and keep driving. I'm not at it to show someone else, hey, look what I've done, or look at this. It's always to beat myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, sort of a personal improvement model. Yeah. That's cool. Appreciate that. I usually ask this first, but I wanted to go to it last. But what does leadership mean to you, and how has your definition of leadership changed throughout your career? So starting here in VMI, going into the military, and then being out in the practice.
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier. Being you have to know how to follow someone first before you can ever try to lead somebody.
Right.
And that is a constant balance
Right.
of how do you know when you need to follow someone,
Right.
and how do you then when you need to step in and need to lead that person.
Right.
And as a quote unquote leader,
Mm-hmm.
right, you have to do that without any hiccups and be able to switch that hat on and off. And
Right.
again, VMI starts that and instills that into you day one, because
Mm-hmm.
again, you're getting yelled at by cadre, right? RDC and all these other people,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 seconds later, someone's telling you you're in charge. Go do this, and then you're stuck going,
Right. How
do I do this, right?
Right.
And you're trying to lead your peers. So you were just having to follow someone. Now you have to lead, and it's back and forth, and it's this, I don't want to say a ping pong game, but you have to be able to do that with like a light switch,
Right.
and not hiccup, because if you do, those are when you stumble and ultimately might fail on something and have to
That's
get
when
picked
you
up.
get boned.
Yeah, right.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. I think maybe, do I have one more question here? Hopefully this will be a good one, and perhaps we'll end on that. What has been your most difficult decision you've had to make as a leader? Something that you could actually share.
Difficult decision that I had to do as a leader. I've had to fire a chief, a platoon chief of mine. And basically I ended his career. A guy that had a very reputable reputation, had plenty of awards for different combat missions and things like that,
Right.
and I had to fire him. He just wasn't living up to what I was expecting, what my platoon was expecting from a chief, and that was difficult.
Right.
And I like I said, I essentially ended his career because of that. Because
Right.
I mean, for SEAL community, your platoon chief or a platoon commander, if you don't do those jobs and you don't do them well and go past them, I mean, it's a headshot. You're basically, your career is done. You're not going to advance past those. You might not even make rank next
But
time.
the stakes are super high, right, in those situations.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's why, I mean, they're the milestone. That's your first milestone as an officer. It's your real first milestone mark, because if you don't pass platoon commander, you're never going to make command, right? And you're only a lieutenant at the time,
Right.
so you're 4 years or so into the military, and you potentially are leading 16 to 21-ish guys, and your platoon chief is towards maybe the end of his career, 15 to
Sure.
12 to 15 years somewhere in. So he's obviously older and more wiser than you are. But that position for him, again, is his milestone to, if he ever wants to be command master chief or anything, I mean, that could hinge on him even getting a retirement.
Right.
So
Right. So a lot of thought went into that, I take it.
a lot of consulting with other leadership and
Sure,
others. So.
right. So, I mean, that's also another good practice, right, in terms of being a leader is talking to your other leaders,
There's
giving advice.
very much so.
Yeah, Well, great. I really appreciate it. That kind of exhausts what I have.
No
But
worries.
if you want to, if you have anything to say to cadets, maybe a little advice on how to get through the next few months.
Yeah, buy Strike Force. No, no. Honestly, like you said, I wouldn't have gotten into VMI if it wasn't for the help of alum. You know,
Right.
and we were just talking about this in one of the workshops we were in. Is, you know, how to get and how cadets start tapping into the VMI alumni network early and often.
Right.
And it is relationships. It is getting into them. It's not, there's not any crazy like secret handshakes you have to do or anything like that. It's simply just having a conversation with a few people, extending that, invite to something, or maybe, accepting an invite to something,
Yeah.
and starting that conversation, because that network is extremely powerful. And when leveraged properly, it allows you to have exponential growth into anything you ever want to do. It's just you have to put some time into that, and that time is really minuscule compared to the return that you get back.
Wow. Powerful. Great.
Yep.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to this session of the CLE's Leadership Podcast featuring Sean Matson, VMI alumnus from the class of 2005. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to hear more, don't forget to subscribe. For more information about CLE events and programs, please visit our website at www.vmi.edu/CLE. We'd love to hear from you and any comments you may have about this show. Our contact information is available on our website.